Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to another episode of the Payoff Pitch Podcast. I am Brandon Brown, joined today by Tom Brew and Brady Farkas. Got some good stuff to talk about as we put a bow on the month of April and keep rolling in, I guess, marching towards the summer, right, guys? We're about a month and a half away from summer baseball, but it's warming up out there. I know there was some record-breaking heat around my parts here in Michigan. How's things been for you, Tom and Brady, in terms of the weather and trying to get some of these baseball games in some, I think, some early season warmth down around the country?
Well, I was fortunate enough to spend last weekend in San Diego, so my weather.
Ah,
Although I did have to call myself out on social media because going from Tampa to San Diego, I was totally unprepared I packed poorly, and I usually take pride in packing well, but I did not bring a jacket. I did not bring a sweater. I did not bring anything warm. And that first game Friday night at Petco Park, to this game day temperature was 57 degrees, and I was freezing. But I wasn't really prepared for that. But it was sunny and beautiful the whole weekend long, and it was my first trip to San Diego and my first trip to Petco Park, and it was just beautiful. And of course, we've had plenty of warm weather in Tampa all year. The weather's been really good for the Rays playing outdoors in Tampa this first month of the season, but the weather has certainly been better than the baseball, that's for sure.
Well, it's the Northeast right now. So one day it's 78, one day it's 58, and it's very, very windy.
Yeah, we've been dealing with a little bit of that. I just know some records were set for the month of April. It got into the mid to high 80s around the Metro Detroit area a little bit. So it's been interesting to see. Yeah, like you said, I think it was 55 or something yesterday, maybe wind tearing through here. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about the month of April. I want to start with you, Tom. Aaron Judge on an absolute tear. One of the hottest players in baseball. That's not an uncommon place for him. But what was maybe so special about his month here as we're moving into the month of May?
Well, two things for me is, obviously he's leading in every triple crown category and tied in homers. You'd think that'd be the one to be running away with, but Brady's Cal Raleigh's was tied with him at the end of April. But yeah, I mean, hitting in the low 400s, batted balls in play, hitting over 500, which is just crazy. I mean, he's just hitting a whole lot of singles and doubles as well. And Aaron Judge the other day, just, kind of running out of, superlatives to talk about him. He's just been that good. And Judge has even said, or Boone has even said, Judge has really not really hit a groove yet. He thinks he can be even better. And he's just completely dominant. And I don't know why teams pitch to him in close games at all. And I'll be curious to see. They're hosting the Rays this weekend, and I'll be curious to see what they do to deal with him because he's just on a tear. And it's like, I think the Triple Crown talk for him is legit because he's, we always knew he could hit homers, but the Yankees are putting enough guys on base in front of him all the time. They got some high scoring games. He's driving in runs. And, when you go through 5 weeks of a season and you're hitting 427, that's pretty darn good.
And it's interesting too, because he's doing it without the lineup protection that he's had over the last several years, right? You look at it and say Juan Soto, who was there last year, finished third in the American League MVP. He's not there, signed with the Mets this offseason. Giancarlo Stanton hasn't played yet this whole season because of injury. So the guys who are supposed to be flanking Judge or who have flanked Judge aren't there. So he's doing it. Look, and Paul Goldschmidt's having a good year, but Cody Bellinger has been very, very average. Jats Chisholm has been below average. The guys in that lineup who are supposed to prop you up really aren't doing the job, and he's still putting up MVP caliber numbers. And right now he's kind of well on pace to win his second straight MVP, his third overall.
Well, let's stay right here with you, Brady. Tom did a good job of segueing us into your Seattle Mariners, who are pretty hot right now. He mentioned Cal Raleigh really hitting the ball well. The Mariners 8-2 over their last 10, and I guess you'd have to be, as a fan and someone covering the team, pretty pleased right now, huh?
Look, I asked them to go 18-12 in the first 30. They got to 18-12 in the first 30. They did it slightly different maybe than I would have expected, but at the end of the day, they got exactly where I think they needed to be. Look, for as complex as baseball can be, there's three things that it really boils down to. One, can you win at home? Two, can you beat the teams you're supposed to beat? And three, can you win in the division? And the Mariners have done all three of those things right now. Okay, they had 18 of their first 30 games at home. They're 18-12. Check. They've beaten the teams they're supposed to beat. They just took 2 of 3 from the Marlins, who they lost 2 of 3 to last year. They were under 500 against the woeful Angels last year. They just swept them in a 2-game set. They've beaten who they're supposed to beat. They've done what they're supposed to do. And oh, by the way, they're 9-3 against the division. Okay. I am tired of seeing the last few years this team go through a big swoon, whether it be at the beginning of the year or in the middle of the year, and then be forced to pull a rabbit out of their hat at the end of the season and do all of these things that are really hard to do. Because when you take care of what you're supposed to take care of, you don't put yourself in that position. They're going to go to Texas this weekend, and while I don't want them to, I think they can afford to lose this series because they've proven that they can take care of business against who they're supposed to, which is what plagued them last year, going under 500 against the Angels and losing to the Marlins. Again, they've done it a little differently, but very, very impressive.
How you said you wanted them to get there? Was that expected? I guess is another way to answer that question.
I don't know that you ever expect anybody to play 600 ball, right? And I don't know that you ever expect most teams to get to 95, 96 win paces. So was it expected? No. Was it possible? Yes. But again, it's happened in reverse. We expected the Mariners to be a team that could pitch and couldn't hit, and a lot of games would be 2-1 or 3-2. Right now, they've got a top 5 offense in the sport. Right? Like, they're not supposed to be able to do this offensively, and the pitching really hasn't been there, at least to the level we'd expect on the starting front. So they're winning games now 6-4 and 7-5, which was unheard of in the last couple of years. Is it sustainable? I think the offensive approach is sustainable, and I think they're going to continue to be pesky to play against. At some point, the home runs will probably regress back to the mean, but I do think this team is good, and I think there's a lot under the hood that leads for optimism. Again, are they going to win 96 games? No, I don't think so. But in this division, in this league, I don't think you have to win 96 games. I think 88 will probably do. And every win in April counts the same as it does in September. You just keep banking them now. You don't need to get them later.
There you go. Well, Tom, we started you off with the Yankees. I just realized looking at our topics, we got an all AL East slate for you today. So let's shift over to the Blue Jays. And you wanted to talk a little bit about Anthony Santander and how he's not maybe performing how many thought he would. He's batting just 178, only 4 homers. I guess what's wrong with him right now? How bad is that influencing what the Blue Jays are doing, and how big of a problem is this moving into May?
Yeah, to me, that was a big signing for them because they came into this season with a lot of uncertainty. I mean, probably more uncertainty than anybody in baseball because they had to do something with the Vladimir Guerrero thing, and there was a lot of people that were they weren't betting on over 50-50 that was going to happen, and it did. But to add Santander to that lineup, was really supposed to really lengthen it out and provide, additional power spot in the middle. And he's just struggled from the get-go. And, there are a lot of people in Baltimore who were saying, I told you so. He was kind of holding out for $100 million deal from the Orioles, never got it, and wound up signing with a division rival. But, I did not expect him to hit 175 out of the gate. That's for sure. And, 4 homers, 3 solos, hasn't really done much to provide them. And, they got off to a surprisingly good start, but, now they lost 8 of 9. They were getting clobbered. I mean, I think that was in the 8 losses, was a run differential of minus 37. I think it was. It's they were, getting beat, handily every night and just not scoring runs. And, you need your heart of the order guys to carry you through certain stretches, and that just hasn't happened yet. And it's impatient people want to slap that bust label on right away, but and obviously we're just getting into May. He could certainly turn it around. He's been a guy who's had month-long hot streaks before, but certainly these first 5 weeks he hasn't shown us much at all.
I was going to go exactly where you just said. I mean, we're past the 30 game mark at this point. Are we past the it's still early? I mean, is this kind of where he's at right now? I mean, what do you think is going to happen moving forward? You said he can get hot, but we're 30 plus games in now at this point.
Yeah, sometimes the old Yogi Berra line is true that sometimes it gets late early, and and I think it's Brady can speak to the entire American League too, but it's I don't think we have any juggernauts this year that are going to win 100+ games. I mean, obviously the Tigers are playing very well, but they've benefited from a good schedule, and they're playing really well at home. And the Mariners are next with 18 wins. But like as Brady said, I don't see them as a 100-win team, but they're playing well now. And it's and then the Yankees, they've got a lot of good things happening there, but and not above and beyond. Judge Goldschmidt's been really good. Max Fried has been incredibly good, and their Weaver is unhittable out of the bullpen, but they have many other issues to worry about too. So it's it's obviously good to be where you're at 5-6 weeks in, but I think there are it's going to be a year where every team in the American League will have that occasional 3-7 or 2-8 stretch, over a couple of week period where they kind of level things out a little bit. And because everybody's, the American League East is still fairly well bunched up. The American League West is certainly most everyone is playing well, and until the Angels have fallen off lately. So I think everything's going to stay bunched up for a while, and the team can sort of get hot and stay hot. We'll be able to pull away, but we haven't seen much of that yet. I think everybody's kind of done some nice things, but then they've also had some bad stretches too.
Brady, I don't know if you wanted to chime in on that before we ask your next part of another AL team. It kind of wraps into it, I guess. You talked about the Mariners being hot. What word would you use to describe the Royals then? They're 9-1 over their last 10. Another American League team surging right now, like Tom just said. I mean, is this kind of how it's going to look for that whole league, like Tom said?
I picked the Royals to win the American League Central, and they started off dreadfully, but I think this team is good, and I think they're built to be good. Okay. Look, they've got arguably the best player all around in the American League in Bobby Witt Jr. He finished second in the MVP voting last year. I know Judge, again, is the MVP candidate right now, or the MVP favorite, but Witt, man, he is so good all around. Like gold glover, silver slugger, all-star, MVP runner-up last season. He's a guy who can go 30-30 or 30-40 every single season. So he's rolling. He's got a 22-game hit streak. That's the 6th longest in franchise history. They just put a whooping on the Rays, took them for 3 on the road. Again, they've won 9 of 10. Cole Ragans, who he didn't pitch his last time out, is still one of the top lefties in all of baseball, one of the top pitchers in the American League. I like Seth Lugo there. The back end of the bullpen's been better with Carlos Estevez. The Central, with the Tigers, the Guardians, and the Royals, looks fairly competitive at the top. The Twins and the White Sox are bad, but those 3 are going to be jostling for playoff position all year. So I think the Royals are good. They do have playoff experience getting to the division series last year. They get a chance to go and stay hot this weekend against a reeling Baltimore team. And I throw this out here just for fun, Tom. Again, you'll appreciate this as a Rays guy. So all the talk is about Chandler Simpson, right? The Rays rookie stole 104 bases last year in the minor leagues. Get this one, okay? Asbel Gonzalez, who's a 19-year-old Royals prospect, stole 30 bases in the month of April. That is the most stolen bases ever before May 1st in the minor league since they've been tracking the data. Ricky Henderson, the greatest base stealer of all time, the most he ever had before May 1st was 22. This kid's on 150 stolen base right now. He's years away from the majors, but the Royals' good juju extends all the way down right now.
I don't think there's any question about that. I had the luxury, obviously, of seeing the Royals the last 3 nights here in Tampa, and they're getting really good pitching. I mean, Noah Cameron, minor leaguer they bring up, for a spot start, on Wednesday, throws, into the 7th with a no-hitter. And then, Seth Lugo yesterday was really good. I mean, they held the Rays to 3 runs in 3 days and, and sweeping on the road. And that was the first time the Royals had swept a series in Tampa Bay since 1998, the year the Rays started. It had been that long. So that was a big deal. And like Brady said, they did get off to a weird start. They're the only team in baseball that has a 6-game losing streak and a 6-game winning streak. And they did it all in about a 2.5-week window. And but they've turned around. They're getting some real timely hitting now too. And like yesterday, Shane Baz, who's been really good for the Rays, was just leaving balls over the middle of the plate, and they were just hitting him so hard right through the heart of that order. Witt and Pasquantino and Sal Perez and all that stuff. Just one, homer, double, homer, just pounding, hitting the ball hard and pounding people. And the lineup is deep enough. They don't do a lot of hitting at the bottom of it, but they can really run. I mean, Garcia had a couple of stolen bases, stole second, stole third, scored on a sacrifice fly, those type of things. The Royals do that, and they, whenever, especially when you're playing a lot of close games, and they have a good bullpen that was certainly really good in the Rays series. But when you have a lineup that's going to play a lot of close games, whenever you're getting that insurance run, especially kind of, 2 stolen bases and a sacrifice fly to get an insurance run, that really pays off over the course of time. It's a good team, and and like I said, I like that team a lot too. And Mac Quatraro is doing a great job as a manager, and they've got it looks like plenty of depth if they need it down on the farm too.
Well, Tom, you talked about Aaron Judge and the Yankees playing well, not surprisingly. We talked about the Mariners being hot. We talked about the Royals being hot. I love hearing you guys mention my Tigers, and I love seeing that 20-win number next to their name already pretty early in the season. But one team kind of heading in the other direction, Tom, that you wanted to talk about, the Orioles. And the phrasing that you used is that their window may be closing, I guess. What exactly does that mean as they sit at 12-18 and just 3-7 over their last 10?
Well, I don't mind saying that the the baseball team I've enjoyed watching the most in the last 3 years has been the Baltimore Orioles, because they had a plan for rebuilding. I mean, they were brutally horrible for many, many years. I mean, as recently as 2021, they only won 52 games, but they had all these young, bright stars coming up, and Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holliday and Jordan Westburg, and running down the line. And all of a sudden, they win a division in 23, win 101 games, win 95 last year, I think it was. And made the playoffs 2 years in a row, but got swept at home twice. And then all of a sudden they go into this off season, and they don't find a way to keep Corbin Burns there. They don't find a way to keep Santander there. And they tried to mix and match their pitching staff, and it's just blown up in their face. They certainly have had injuries. Grayson Rodriguez hasn't pitched much. Zach Eflin only made 3 starts. He's been out. But they signed Charlie Morton, and his ERA in his first 5 starts was over 10. And they bring out Kyle Gibson to try to fill a gap the other day, and he gave up 9 runs in 3 innings. Their starting pitching is so bad that I just don't know how they can compete going forward enough to be a playoff team again this year. I mean, they give up way too much runs, and they're really not hitting all that well either. They 4 guys, Henderson, Rutschman, Westberg, and can't remember who the 4th
Holiday, I think.
Mountcastle, Ryan Mountcastle. All of them 225 or lower. They're in Mountcastle's under 200. They're not doing much, and when I wrote my storylines column, for April the other day, it's like, I said, is the window closing or is it closed? I mean, is this team, everybody thought this core group would win a World Series or 2, and I don't see that right now. And I thought, well, I don't, will they get out of this? And then I looked at their schedule for May. In their 8 series in May, they play 5 teams with a losing record, and they play 3 others who are just barely over 500 in the Royals and the Red Sox. So they've got a chance to get better, but I don't know if they will. I just don't see that. I just don't see a run in them, because I don't think they can go out night after night after night and hold good teams, to a run or 2 and put some stuff together. Now, they may prove me wrong, but right now at 12-18, like if they're back over 500 by the end of May, I'll be stunned by that.
It goes to just, Brandon, we talked a little bit about this last week. We just kind of alluded to it. It's so frustrating for fans because, to Tom's point, right? Like, you go through 5 years or so of just being unwatchable. And the fans stand by you and they wait for it. And they're told that this awful stuff is going to pay off, right? And you quote, earn the top draft picks, and you get all the top prospects, and you watch them develop, and then they come up, and then because you've been so bad and you've gutted the payroll, you should, in theory, have a whole bunch of surplus money to play with when it comes time to put your chips in the center of the table. And to Tom's point, they haven't done that. Now, maybe they tried and struck out. We don't really know all of the negotiations, but like you go out and you bring in a 41-year-old in Charlie Morton and a 35-year-old in Tomoyuki Shigano, and you also go and get Tyler O'Neill, and that's it. Right? Like you lose Santander, you lose Burns, and then you bring in O'Neill and a couple of 35-plus pitchers. Like this is supposed to be the window. And the window can close quick, right? Guys get hurt, guys get injured, and then all of a sudden the window you thought you had, we got another year or two of this core, then it's gone. And then you're dealing with other guys leaving, and you got to start the process over again. This is what's so frustrating about baseball in general is that the rebuilds are long, they are arduous, and they are painful, and then it's supposed to be paid off with prospects and spending, and the Orioles have only done half of that.
Yeah, as you mentioned that, I looked back at the notes from last week sitting in front of me. We talked about 3 hot teams last week in the Mets, Mariners, and Cubs, and I guess this is 2 weeks in a row of talking about the Orioles skidding a little bit and kind of wondering what they're doing and what's going on.
They're still struggling.
There you go. Not much has changed. We'll stick with you, Brady, and talking about a team that's struggling already and just got a dose of bad news with the Angels and Mike Trout put on the 10-day IL. Left knee bone bruise. They're saying if you just type in Mike Trout right now on any search, it says injured but not serious. And I'm seeing that a lot. First of all, do you buy that? Is this not serious? Mike Trout's not the spring chicken he once was. And when you're dealing with a bone bruise already this early in the season, how bad is that? How could it linger? And ultimately, what's it mean for the Angels, who are off to a pretty rocky start already?
I mean, the Angels stink. Okay, and right. Not having Mike Trout is just more reason for them to not be particularly good. They have the longest playoff drought in the league right now. You take out their best player, their most accomplished player, their one real true power threat along with Jorge Soler. That's just bad news written all over it there for the Halos. So that's bad. The more important thing is just Trout individually. I'm not all that worried about this injury. I think, look, they owe him. He's got a $400 million contract, and he's got a bunch of money still left on that contract. So they're going to be as careful with him as possible. So I get it. But every time that we as baseball fans don't get to see Mike Trout, it's sad, because this is a guy who, and I have said this for a couple of years now, Ken Griffey Jr. is my all-time favorite player, right? If you're between the age of 33 and 45, there's a good chance that Ken Griffey Jr. is your all-time favorite player as well. Yep. I love Griffey. Mike Trout at his peak is the greatest baseball player I've ever seen. And, Ohtani is the most talented baseball player I've ever seen, and he's doing things we've never seen. But peak Mike Trout, I've never seen anything like it. And he's only barely over 30. We're supposed to have another decade to watch Mike Trout be good. And here we are now. Look, he hasn't played more than 119 games in 5 years or something like that. And he hasn't played above more than 80 games in 4 of those 5. Now, he played 53 of 60 in the COVID year, which I count in there. But, we just haven't seen a whole lot of Mike Trout lately. This guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He was supposed to be in the inner circle of first ballot Hall of Famers. And we're being robbed of seeing one of the great players. And, look, Father Time is unbeaten. And it comes for you, and it comes for you at different times. And sometimes when you come up at 20, it's really great. We get to see you early. But when you hit 30 and you've got all the tread on the tires, it can snowball. And that's what we've seen, and that's what we hope is not the case here. But every time you see Mike Trout limp off a field or get taken out of the lineup, it's always sad.
It sure is. And it goes back, too. I mean, he's only played more than 116 games once in the last 10 years. That's, there's always been some sort of stretch of injuries that takes him away from us every year. And, and to be honest, I mean, if I give Santander crap for not hitting 200, Mike Trout's hitting 179 right now. He's got 9 home runs, but he's been striking out a lot, and he's not having the greatest of years either, but still unfortunate. Like Brady says, Mike Trout at his best is an absolute pleasure to watch. I mean, he's one of those guys that when they're on the schedule, you at least want to go see him and catch him when you can. But hopefully this won't be too long because the Angels are, clearly I think the worst team in that division, but they're not horrible. They've got some players, and they can make life miserable for people, and they can score a ton of runs in a game now and again. But certainly to at least be competitive and stick around, they certainly need him back in the lineup.
It's pretty crazy. I say he's not a spring chicken anymore, and then I look up and he's Mike Trout's 33. Like, he really's been in the in the majors for 15 years. Like, I can't believe it's been that long. But yeah, to Brady's point, you start talking about both of you guys. I mean, being injured, being oft injured, and missing games, and now he's getting into. Are we touching mid 30s when you're 33? I mean, he's getting into mid 30s at this point. I mean, that's got to be a little bit cause for concern, and the contract and everything. The Angels have to be careful with him. So yeah, I mean, Brady, we'll wrap up with this real quick. Like, you said you kind of feel like you're being robbed of Mike Trout a little bit. Like, is this what he is now? I mean, you're 33. Like, that's you don't come back from injuries real fast at 33. I mean, he's not 26 or 27. Like, how alarming is it when you see that again? And it's just now May.
Well, it's always alarming. But again, this is a bone bruise, and I think that they're going to be. I had a very interesting conversation recently with Buster Olney of ESPN, and he said that baseball in general has gotten far more conservative when it comes to handling injuries. And he said he had a talk with Dr. James Andrews, the famous orthopedic surgeon, where he said, as medicine gets better, you're going to see more injuries. And that kind of makes you think for a second, why would that be the case? They say, look, because as we start being able to diagnose things and we start being able to get into the little nooks and crannies of the body and we see that something is a little bit off, we're going to pull you off the field before something majorly goes off the rail. And we'd rather lose you for 10 days now than 4 months later. So I'm not so much worried about this, but they're going to handle him with kid gloves moving forward because they're going to try to avoid the 60 or 70 game absence if they can limit it to 10. So I'm not worried about this. I'm just disappointed as a fan that a guy who was so good to watch and was such a good player, he's not that guy anymore. But every time he takes the field, you can be reminded of what he was. But when he's not on the field enough, that's a problem.
Yep, absolutely. And I agree with your point exactly about how people deal with injuries anymore. It's like to me, like one of my all-time favorite players to watch right now is Shane McClanahan, the pitcher for the Rays. He was tremendous in 22 and 23, and then he had needed Tommy John surgery, and they took their time with him all last year. He could have maybe ramped up in September if need be, and they didn't. And then this spring, he was incredible. He was throwing 97, 98, 99 this spring. Great command over all those pitches. And then in his last spring training start, he gets this little nerve thing going on in his arm, and they had to shut him down. Well, the thing's been slow to just get back on his own, and here we are 5 weeks into the season now, and he's still not even throwing. And then, so they put him on the 60-day injured list yesterday, and only because they're just, it's going to be 2 months from the, retroactive from opening day before he's even back out there, because when he gets the ball back in his hand, like the Rays' plans with starting pitchers is it's 4 to 6 weeks of ramp up before they take the mound again, and he's still not even throwing. So Shane McClanahan, if he pitches a game in June, I'll be surprised. I mean, it's just because it takes so long to recover, and then it takes so long to ramp back up, and they don't ever want to rush things. And now here it is, he's going to wind up missing, half a season maybe. And I'm just hoping he comes back healthy because it's fun to watch. And saw him the other night, and he's very frustrated too. He's certainly wishing he could be out there playing. But I agree 100%. Injuries roll in, and instead of spitting on it and rubbing some dirt on it, 10 days on the IL, and we'll reevaluate in 3 weeks type stuff.
Well, let's stick right there with your Rays, Tom. Obviously, they're in a weird situation down there with their home games. I don't know if they feel like home games even to them yet. I mean, we talked about we're past the 30-game mark at this point, but it still feels a little bit awkward, I guess. That's how you worded it. They're 14 and 17, so not playing the best baseball in the world, but even the players are even talking about how it's just weird. And I think you used the word they're not comfortable playing quote unquote home games even at this point.
Exactly. I mean, they literally do not have a home field advantage. I mean, it's they're playing in the spring stadium of their arch rivals. And granted, it's still in Tampa Bay, and it's kudos to the Steinbrenners and everybody who made sure that it could happen, so that we, despite the damage to the Trop, that we still have Major League Baseball in Tampa Bay this year. But the Rays certainly don't feel comfortable there and seem comfortable there. It's obviously they're playing outdoors in Tampa for the first time, and what's really been strange is that how the winds blow in different directions there every day. And and there's the Steinbrenner Field dimensions, the fence dimensions are exactly what they are in Yankee Stadium. So there's that short porch in right field, and I think especially a lot of the Rays right-handed hitters have been kind of caught in trying to hit the ball the opposite way too much, where they're striking out a lot, hitting a lot of weak grounders to second base, stuff like that. They're kind of in their heads a little bit, and they've lost 8 out of 9 at home. They front loaded their schedule on purpose so they could play games in good weather before the rainy season starts, and they haven't really been able to take advantage of it. And they're the home team, but they certainly don't have any home field advantage at all.
Well, we'll continue to talk about the Rays, obviously, with you, Tom, as we move forward. And Brady, we'll kind of put a bow on today's episode with this, our most timely topic, I guess we could call it, the series between the Dodgers and the Braves this weekend. Just kind of give us an outlook on that. I know we talked about the Braves on, I think, our first or second episode, and they looked dead in the water. I don't think you'd say that now at 14-16. They've been playing better baseball. Dodgers still most people's pick to win the whole thing. But what's the outlook for the series that gets going tonight at 7:15?
It's important for the Braves, right? Like, they got a chance to get over 500 in this series. I don't think they're going to sweep the Dodgers to do it, but they have a chance to. Or they could also be right back down again, and be 5 games under or so. So they need to keep just treading water in this series. This is this is supposed to be an NLCS preview, right? This is supposed to be an NLCS preview. The Braves are supposed to be that team. I think they're still very, very good. The Dodgers have struggled a little bit, right? They were 8-0 to start the season, and then they went through an 8-10 spot. They've got a ton of injuries. Tyler Glass now injured again, another guy who's been off injured in his career. Blake Snell on the injured list as well. So I still think the Dodgers are excellent. I still think that they're built for the long term. The Braves are a team that, look, we talk about all the wins counting the same in April as they do in September. Get them now so you don't have to get them then. They put themselves in a position to have to start getting them. And they're going to need to go out and play well this series. So I do think this is one of the series to watch.
Tom, any last words here as we get ready to put a bow? We didn't do a lot of National League talking today. I guess we'll throw that out there real quick.
On that real quick then. There's obviously Rays yet Yankees. I'll be paying attention to that. But I'm really looking forward to Diamondbacks Phillies at Citizens Bank Park this weekend, because that 2023 playoff series with those two teams was incredible. One of my favorite series in recent memory, and both teams certainly plan on being back in the postseason this year. Be a good matchup, and then Aaron Nola is pitching for the Phillies tomorrow, and he's been a little shaky here in 2025. So I think that's going to be a great series and fun to watch as well too. And there's some good bit of that, but yeah, absolutely. And we'll put a little pin in our notepad that talk more National League baseball next week. I agree. We did probably get away from it a little bit this week, but yeah, looking forward to D-backs Phillies. Should be a fun series.
Well, there you have it. I am Brandon Brown. They are two of the most knowledgeable dudes in the world when it comes to talking baseball. I love every week when we get together and talk about this stuff. Tom Brew, Brady Farkas. Thanks, everybody out there, for listening. We'll be back next week.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Tom.